All right. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. My name is Hannah Greenberg, and I'm with the City of San Jose. This is the Electrification Ambassador Roundtable, where you'll learn from fellow residents and contractors about their experiences with electrification. If you have questions, please write them down on the index cards. Raise your hand in the air once you've written down a question. I'll grab them from you, and we'll answer the questions at the end. We are lucky to have Barry Cinnamon as our moderator. Barry has been an energy nerd for 40 plus years. He's the CEO of Cinnamon Energy Systems, founder of Akina and Westinghouse Solar, and an occupant of an all-electric negative carbon home in San Jose. Barry will introduce you to our esteemed panelists. Please give a round of applause for these electrification leaders.
Okay, thanks, Hannah, and thanks to the entire team in San Jose who put this great program together. I've had a chance to talk to the panelists here. Pretty impressive with what they're doing, and I hope you have some time to take a look at the exhibits up top. All the equipment, all the services there are absolutely great. The zero carbon concept and the electrification retrofits, it's kind of a new concept, but what I really like about it is it's here and now, the equipment's reliable, and it's become much more affordable, especially with some of the incentives that San Jose offers, which is really good, plus other tax credits that are available. Now, our panel here includes one of the most experienced electrification contractors in the area, Ellen, and also 3 of your San Jose neighbors who have already made a lot of progress on this whole electrification concept. So I'm going to just introduce the panelists briefly. Alan Gillian designed and built the first certified zero energy home in California in 2011. He and his company, One Sky Homes, has been designing and building all electric zero energy homes in the Bay Area with heat pumps and induction cooktops ever since. So a real pioneer there. Christy Tiet Cinnamon moved into a 50-year-old home in San Jose on January 1st, 2019. Since then, she upgraded the house with LED bulbs, an electric dryer, variable speed pool pump, extra attic insulation, a heat pump HVAC system, upgraded electric service, rooftop solar with storage batteries, an EV charger, a heat pump water heater, and an induction stove. With all that, she's still stuck with a 50-year-old kitchen with old cabinets. She's a graduate of San Francisco State University with a major in accounting and is the managing director at Cinnamon Energy Systems. Doug Coons, on my left here, is a homeowner in Sunnyvale who's installed an electric heat pump water heater, space conditioning, clothes dryer, and induction stove, along with 2 plug-in electric vehicles. He's thinking about installing solar next. Doug earned a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and a master's degree in management science and engineering, both from Stanford, and has a master's degree in medical informatics from Northwestern. He currently works as a product manager for a small software company that focuses on helping healthcare organizations make better use of information to improve patient care. And Ken Skia Hughes, all the way on the left here, is a recent San Jose homeowner. 2 years ago, he bought an electric vehicle, and this past week, he electrified his home heating and hot water systems with heat pumps. Ken's looking forward to adding solar electricity and energy storage to complete his transition to sustainable electric power. Now, the way we're going to do the session today, instead of having a formal presentation, we're going to spend about 20 minutes on a moderated Q&A panel. I've got a bunch of questions, and your neighbors and the expert over here is going to talk about these benefits. And after that 20 minutes, we'll have 20 more minutes for audience Q&A. So please fill out the cards, hand them to Hannah and the other staff members here, and we'll try and get to as many of your questions as possible. All right, well, let's just kind of open it up here. We'll start on my left over here. Why did you decide to electrify your home, and what are the benefits that you're seeing with an all-electric home? Let's just get kind of a quick answer from the homeowners here.
Yeah, as Barry said, I recently moved here, came from the East Coast, and we had a heat pump system for the HVAC in Massachusetts, which worked very well, that we were happy with. So when we moved here, I've always wanted to try to improve my carbon footprint, and that was always in my head that we would do the same thing here. And so we're beginning on that road. So a little bit of a process, but we're starting down that road. And I think I guess one of the benefits of the heat pump system for us, it's a very unobtrusive system. I guess it's not very loud. It keeps everything very constant, very consistent. No temperature swings. So it's a very comfortable system, and it also comes with the benefit for us of air conditioning, which we probably wouldn't get normally, but as a heat pump, it can operate in both directions. So that was an added benefit for us.
So in my case, my decarbonization journey started with a conversation with my kids. They were very upset at the lack of progress in terms of addressing climate change. And so I said, all right, well, I believe in the power of a positive example. There's a lot out in society that we can't directly affect, but we can start within our own four walls and see what we can do. And that's what we can do. So that was a couple of years ago, and we've been chipping away at it ever since. In terms of benefits, one of the things that I would call out, we've got heat pump space conditioning, so not only air conditioning, but also heating the house through the winter. And one thing I've noticed, like our old gas furnace was what was called single stage, so it was either all the way on or not running at all. And so that, what would happen would be the house would get a little cold, and then the furnace would bang on, and this wave of too hot air would come out, and take us a little past, and then we trickle back down to being too cold again. And with the heat pump, it's what's called variable stage. So basically it can be running just enough to trickle the heat in and keep the house at a very nice, steady temperature. So we've noticed that, as well as slashing our carbon footprint, we're more comfortable.
Gas furnace also got a variable speed.
No, it was an old one.
Well, we have decided to convert because I knew it's better for our environment. And my solar Nazi husband talked me into it. So, well, we got great benefits from our heating as well. We get control over our heating system. And and it's so quiet, we can't even hear it come on. So the only time we could tell is that the room is warmer. So that's my thing.
My journey started a decade ago as a design builder when I learned about California's Global Solutions Warming Act that Governor Schwarzenegger courageously introduced, the concept of zero energy building, meaning producing what you use. And I was so inspired by that, I said, that's the future. Probably take a long time to get there, but that's what I want to do with my building career. So we built, as the introduction said, we set about building it, and what an adventure of learning. And it's inspiring for me, gratifying to see here 10 years later, the progress that's been made, and the learning curve that you all are starting yourselves. Things like, the interesting thing is this, the whole vocabulary, heat pump sounds very foreign, but this technology has been around us for decades and decades and decades. Your refrigerator is a heat pump, right? Your air conditioner is a heat pump. We call it a heat pump now. If we give it a reversing valve, it basically is an air conditioner that works in both directions. It moves heat in both directions. So it's very interesting. Don't be intimidated by it. This technology is old as the hills. It's just being repackaged and repurposed for different uses like heating hot water and space conditioning. So I was inspired, and we're sort of in the fight. Happy to answer more questions.
So it's kind of, I just want to add one more thing, which I really observed happen significantly in the solar industry. The reason why most people go solar is because it's cheaper. And what I'm also seeing, especially if you have solar or if you've got another cheap source of electricity, is electrifying your house can be less expensive than relying on natural gas or other sources, especially when you look at some of the incentives that the city of San Jose has or the federal government offers. So that's that, and when the economics get good, it really takes off. And we're seeing that especially with new
Yeah,
construction.
let me make a comment on that. So most of our work now is all new custom homes, and we save thousands and thousands of dollars by not installing gas infrastructure. The cost of putting all of the gas piping from the main that we pay to the utility, plus the plumbers to bring piping to this sort of thing, it's way cheaper in new construction.
All right, well, just got a bunch of questions here, and we'll cover as much ground as we can. Next question, what was the most challenging thing about the process of electrifying?
Finding the reliable contractors. Very hard. It's a new thing. So a lot of them are not really well educated about that. So a lot of times they turn away from our requests. So that's my number one problem.
For me, it was getting the electric circuits run. So basically, I went through and did an inventory of the natural gas appliances that we wanted to replace, and came up with, all right, what are the circuits that we need to have run in order to have electric replacements for them. So at the time, this was 2017, and it felt like I was having to do a fair amount of research myself in terms of how to do that. But then once I had kind of built up that to-do list, I was able to talk to an electrician and say, here's what I need. And in terms of that, he was able to deliver it very readily.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Christy. I think that finding someone who knew enough or a lot about the new technology and could actually give you good advice. We ended up getting 3 different quotes and getting completely different ideas of what made sense. And so we had to kind of figure it out ourselves or do as much research as we could to try to understand what they were really pitching us. So I think that is, I think hopefully that gets better over time, but I think that is an issue that you have to contend with.
All right, well, as a contractor, Alan, how can you find more good contractors?
Well, most of our work now is new construction, but I mean, as a homeowner, it's very challenging. So the thing is that builders, subcontractors in HVAC and so forth are creatures of habit, and there's a lot of liability and responsibility. When you build it, you are legally responsible for it. So contractors tend to be very conservative with respect to new things, right? Because they're responsible and there's risk. They don't want callbacks, they don't have time, it's expensive. So they tend to go with the things that they know, as Ann said in a previous session. So I would just say, due diligence. They are out there. You have to work hard now, though, because this is not mainstream. This is the beginning of the new markets for new technology. So just do your homework and be careful and reference. This is really important.
Well, I have kind of a geeky thing, which would be a surprise as far as these upgrades. As a homeowner, when I went through the process, even though I am a contractor, the most challenging thing I've encountered getting this equipment working, the equipment's really smart. It's smarter than me. It has software, it requires an internet connection, it requires a Wi-Fi signal, it requires an app on your phone, it requires a lot of configuration. And I have had 0 issues at all with any of the equipment as far as getting it to work, but I am still kind of challenged to get all the apps working properly, which sounds bizarre. And even as a solar contractor, our number one customer service issue over the past 20 years has been making sure that the software keeps working with the hardware. So one wouldn't expect that, but my advice for homeowners is just be prepared for configuring your app and your Wi-Fi and everything else to get some of this new stuff to work. But once you do, it's great. Okay, let's keep going here. Next question. What is something you wish you did or had known before starting a project?
There's probably a lot of things, but I guess before we got all the equipment in, we eventually we got a home audit done, energy audit, and that kind of helped guide us in terms of what would make sense to make our home more efficient and the things that we could do. So we had already insulated some of the house before we did that, and did not seal the house before we insulated it, so we kind of had to go backwards and pull insulation away, and so that ended up being a little bit more of a hassle. Kind of wish I'd done the audit first and done everything in the right order.
So this is a kind of a very specific thing, but for our water heater, you can get a thing called a thermostatic mixing valve. So it mixes cold water in with the hot water, and so what you do is you run your hot water heater at a higher temperature, and it's equivalent to having basically a larger tank at the temperature that you want to have to use for it. In our case, I didn't know what I didn't know and didn't ask for that, and so we have the size of water heater that we want, and I'd say that usually it's big enough, but every once in a while, there's a morning where my daughter spontaneously decides to take a bath or something, and she does occasionally run us out of hot water. So I think that if I had to do this all over again, I would put a valve in like that and basically make sure that instead of it being something that happens every few months, that it just never happened. Thermostatic mixing valves.
You can install after, you can edit it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back and do that, but I would have done it all while I had the plumber out on site.
And Alan, how about what are you hearing back from customers as far as surprises that they had during their installations?
Well, again, my experience is really from new construction, so when they get it, it's a turnkey, move in and the beer is cold and the hot water's hot. But I would say, again, retrofitting, as alluded to before, some of the issues of understanding that you need, these are electrical appliances, right? And if you're replacing gas equipment, you often do not have electrical circuits or services to that area. So that's sort of the number one challenge, is the size of your panel, the location of your panel, such that you can easily add electrical service. That's number one. And the second thing is, if you've heard about condensate. So we're using coils, and there's cold coils that create condensation, and you have to get rid of this condensate, this liquid. Okay, this is common in air conditioners. So if you have an air handler with a coil and air conditioner, there's a little PVC piping that goes out somewhere outside and gets rid of it. Well, this is the same when you add a heat pump water heater, or you're going from a gas furnace to a full heat pump. You have to have condensate. So in a retrofit application, it's just one of those practical issues that you have to be able to get it outside. So I guess this is understanding that there are some of these kinds of challenges. But as these homeowners said, most of our homeowners that move into a high performance new building that's sealed well and insulated well, and that has good, ventilation and a heat pump, they never hear the heating and cooling go on, and the temperatures are even and quiet. So I think that's a great benefit, quality of the air. And so just finally, the replacement, one of the things that people are used to a lot is cooking with gas, because historically that's what we've done, and is cooks. And we do not ever do that. Since our first one, we had air quality tests that were done by Lawrence Berkeley Labs, and the combustion from gas cooking, releases particulates, and it's been lab measured and so forth, and it affects your air quality in addition to safety issues and whatnot. When you go to election and induction cooking, you will never go back, and you have fantastic air quality. I'm sure there'll be more discussions about it. So basically, people love the results of using these kinds of electrical appliances.
Well, now that we're talking about formerly cooking with gas, Christy, what kind of comments do you have on your induction cooktop?
It's much faster. I underestimated how fast it would be to boil a pot of water. It's just boiled within 10 seconds. And one day I cooked a thing of pot stickers, and within like 10 seconds when I turn around, one side already burned. So I just have to learn how to maneuver the control part. I'm still learning, but I love it. It's so clean. It's much easier to clean, and it's just the surface. It's very slick. The piece of glass, yeah.
So not break?
No, I wouldn't bang it with a pot. What else? There's so much benefits with it. And, the stir fry. I love stir fry. And it works well with a big pot that have a flat surface. And I used to have a Viking stove, but then when we moved in this old house, we had a 50-year-old gas stove, and the smelly gas just make me feel sick sometimes. So that's a good thing. He talked me into it.
So from a selfish standpoint, I like to have a ribeye steak every once in a while, and there's like no doubt that the induction cooktop and a cast iron frying pan will cook that ribeye steak perfectly, better than anything else I've ever seen. So it really works out really, really well. Okay, let's keep asking some questions along here. Another one is, how did you decide to prioritize your upgrades? By cost, by complexity, CO2 reductions, what's cheaper? What was a good way to do that?
So I had seen a presentation in Sunnyvale. The Sustainability Commission does like a speaker series, and there was somebody from the Natural Resources Defense Council who was talking about in a typical California home what the largest gas emitters are, and he had this pie chart which showed that typically it's about half of your gas emissions are from a water heater, and then another 40% are from space heating. And so seeing that, it was, okay, I know what my priority list is. We're going to tackle the biggest emitters first. And so for us, the first thing that we painted a target on was the water heater. We did take longer to get to the furnace just because I think that there was a little more thought and planning involved. But definitely, in our case, it was CO2 reduction and going after the water heater.
Yeah, for us, definitely the CO2, I think, was the driving force. I guess there's always had this guilt about how much carbon we're generating, so that's always in the back of my mind. And that's one of the, I guess, big benefits of doing this is that it makes you more guilt-free. It's just nice knowing that you're not contributing as much as you were before to the carbon crisis. But yeah, so CO2, but of course, there's, everything figures into it. There's tax implications or rebates that you can consider. But the primary thing is how much are we impacting, the environment.
For a builder, for someone who's responsible for what they build, which contractors are legally, morally, it's about simplicity. We want things that are simple and robust, and just don't break. So Barry mentioned some of the issues associated with apps and connections and so forth. We try to avoid as much of that as possible. Maybe a few fun things to fiddle with, right? But for the most part, simplicity. And a new all-electric home, even with solar generation on the roof, an electric heat pump water heater in the garage, for example, a heat pump for space conditioning, again, just an air conditioner that runs in two directions, an electric induction cooktop, etc., dryer, and so forth. These are all off-the-shelf standard pieces of equipment now. You don't have to import them from some exotic place or go to some special distribution outlet. These are all standard appliances, okay, that installed properly, are simple and robust.
I might got some conservations for this one. I agree with you, the robust is most, number one thing. But you got like heat pump one is more complicated than the previous, like the electric coil. It tend to have more complex, tend to have some problems.
Well, sir, with all due respect, it's an air conditioner that runs in both directions. So yes, it has a reversing
I
valve.
understand, I understand quite well, but especially, I know at one of the brands, when they got variable speed, the heat pump, just add one more valve, but just the valve cost some extra cost.
The technology is a little more advanced. You got the Mitsubishi hat on, so it's it works. I would just, the one other thing I would add as far as prioritizing, and this is something that we've always done for our customers, is you tackle the low-hanging fruit first. You look for what's gonna give you the fastest, simple payback. So, for our house, it was, we put in LED bulbs, we upgraded our pool pump to variable speed, we put some more insulation in the roof, and then that's when we started tackling the bigger things like solar, like the heat pumps. The other thing that is surprising, and Alan touched on this very briefly, is when your hot water heater goes out, you have that gas hot water heater, you can't wait like 3 weeks to get a new system, or you can't wait 3 months to upgrade your electrical panel. So it takes some planning. Same thing with your furnace. These are things that you can't replace immediately when something fails. So it takes some planning, both to get the equipment, but more importantly, it takes planning to make sure that your electric service is upgraded to 200 amps in advance of when you think you're really going to need it. It's basically the same thing with an electric vehicle. So we ready for the audience Q&A?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got a couple here. Does anyone else have any? Yeah, I can hand out some extra cards in a second.
come the cars.
Okay. Here you go. Might be a couple more stragglers.
I'm going to look for easy ones, okay. All right, let's see. There's kind of two questions in here. What were the biggest hurdles to installing the heat pump space heating? We'll hit that one first.
Did it say Doug and Ken?
No.
Addressed it to Doug and Ken?
Yeah, it says to Doug and Ken.
Could you say what was the biggest challenge?
What was the biggest challenge to installing the heat pump heating system?
Yeah, in our case, it was a little bit more complicated than I expected it to be. So, as I said earlier, we got 3 quotes, and they were all a lot higher than what we'd expected. And it's specific to our situation. The house is spread out into 2 different sections that had to be heated and cooled separately. And then some of the original ducting that was done was really not sufficient. So every contractor that came out, was saying that they would have to upgrade the ducting. So all the other things that go along with changing a heating system and upgrading it to actually work for our house just added to the cost, which we weren't really expecting. We were kind of thinking you just pull out one unit and stick the other unit in. But that wasn't the case in our scenario. So we had to spend quite a bit of money just to get the rest of the system up to where it should be.
How old is your house?
The house was built in 1950. Yeah, and the furnace was about 15 years old.
And in our case, I would say that probably the biggest obstacle was finding a contractor who was willing to entertain a heat pump as opposed to just put in a gas unit. So we actually were lucky and found an acquaintance of ours had herself just put in a heat pump space heating system, and so we asked her to refer her contractor. And so in talking with that individual, he gave us some good guidance, and we felt confident in terms of moving forward. But that was definitely the biggest barrier.
It's funny, when we started looking around for contractors, both on the HVAC and the hot water heater, most of the contractors we called said, "Why do you want to do that?" You know, why don't you get a instant hot flow-through hot water heater instead of one of these things, so it's kind of spread. All right, next question. I'm gonna try and go get these as quickly as possible, and I think just since we have so many questions, we'll try and get
One
people
more.
to.
That's it.
That's okay. Individually answer. Okay, how efficient are heat pump space heaters in the midwinter here? Alan, you probably have some
Well, we
technical.
have the benefit of very mild climate in the Bay Area, so they're extremely efficient. And the efficiency really, it has to do how well your house is sealed and insulated. You know, it's all about your building envelope, as we say. And if it's well sealed and well insulated, then you know, it's the same for air conditioning and cooling in the summer, both. It uses less energy, but if you have a good building envelope, well insulated and well sealed, and you buy, you know, good modern equipment, doesn't have to be top of the line, it's extremely efficient.
It's on the same card. How can we mitigate PG&E power outages? It's kind of like the elephant in the room over here.
Yeah.
And I'll just answer that very quickly. I mean, it's great that the state and the city is pushing so hard to electrify things for a climate change issue. San Jose Clean Energy is contracted for a lot of energy, but we still depend on the transmission lines, which are controlled by PG&E. So pretty much all we can do as citizens are really immediately, you can look at putting in a battery backup system. Tesla has systems. We also put those systems in. There's some vendors up there. And then just support politicians that are doing the right thing to make sure that our Public Utilities Commission regulates PG&E kind of properly. All right, next question. I have a 100 amp service with photovoltaic on my roof with microinverters and an EV. Do I need to increase the size of my electric service for a heat pump, an induction stove, and battery storage?
Well, the size of the solar production is not the issue. The issue is the size of your service panel from which you'll run the circuits to this equipment. But generally speaking, depending upon the size of the heat pump, the size of the home, I mean, our homes are super efficient. So we run 20 amp, a simple 20 amp, 220 volt circuit even runs our space conditioning. But it could be a 40 or 50 amp circuit that you need, just like you need, think of it as the same you would need for an air conditioning system you use for both directions. In your heat pump, the same with a heat pump water heater. They're usually 220 volt, but low power, 15 amp circuits. So in the scheme of things, there's not a huge amount. Ironically, it's the induction cooktop that takes the most power. A lot of these are actually 40 or 50 amp circuits for modern induction cooktops. So taken together, if you add all of these together, you certainly have to look at the size of your panel and what you can fit into it. Often you'll need an upgrade, and you have to get circuits over to the area. So,
Yeah, as a electrician and a solar contractor, you really need to have a 200 amp panel. So there's a couple of incentives that you can take advantage of now. First, if you put in a heat pump water heater, not only do you get the rebate from the city, which I believe is $2,000, but you also will get another $2,500 rebate from San Jose to offset the cost to upgrade your electric panel. Now, if you put in solar or battery storage at the same time, you can get a 30% tax credit, which applies to the electrical upgrade also. So by being kind of clever and timing things, you can really save a lot of money that way. It's funny, we're getting a lot of questions about the electrical upgrade and a lot of questions about the blackout. Quick question? Yeah.
Yeah, so you say the 250 from San Jose, where?
It's $2,500 rebate from the city of San Jose to offset the cost to upgrade your electric service. At the same time, you put in a heat pump water heater. So you get a double header. Do them both, you'll get $4,500. That's okay. We got plenty. All right.
What's the rebate program name?
Heat pump water heater. There, you can pick up literature up there. Maybe you can get an application.
Okay.
Okay. Next question. What about getting a home energy audit done? How did you go about doing, or if you did you do a home energy audit?
Yeah, I had one done. There's the company that I use is actually presenting upstairs, or has a table upstairs. But you can find them. You can Google it. I went through. I think I went to PG&E's site, and I think I got some links from there. But it's very helpful. They come out and can basically assess how tightly your house is sealed up. The building envelope, as Alan was saying. And give you a detailed list of things that you can do to improve your energy efficiency and what things you need to tackle and approximate costs and things like that. And they also will refer you to what rebates are available for you. So it's very helpful.
All right, here's another question. Question is, can I use my EV, the battery in my electric vehicle, as a source of power? Anybody want to chime in on that? Anybody here working for an EV company?
No, you can't, because the capacity is too small.
But there is a EV2, there is a new format coming out where you can do it.
It's being done in Japan right now as a test, I think. So it's definitely in the works, but not, cars in the US right now are not set up for it.
Does anybody in the audience work for an EV charging company? Koji?
I work for a EV charging company called Paired Power. So there is what's called vehicle to grid or vehicle to home technology coming online. Some of it has been pilot tested by some of the major vehicle OEMs. Someone had alluded to Nissan in Japan has tested it, mostly actually through the DC port, which is the fast charging port if you're familiar with EV charging. So that has been tested and verified, and that can actually be done. They've actually done it in California as well, and I know Honda has a pilot project up in UC Davis. But these technologies are coming online, will be online in 2020, where a lot of the cars can start supporting they hope home power or facility power from the DC, from the fast charging port. So that's all North American models, European models, so BMW, Chevy Bolt. Tesla right now, from our understanding, is the only vehicle that does not allow to have their battery power export to the grid or to the home, probably because they're selling the power packs, which do a pretty good job, but that technology is coming online, so it will be available very soon. Thank you, Barry.
It's great that we got a lot of audience insight, a lot of experience here in Silicon Valley. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer, a lot of people here live in San Jose, but if you don't live in San Jose, you should check your local power provider, which in the other cities might be Silicon Valley Clean Energy or whatever. They also have rebate programs and different things. So you should be sure and check your local power provider to see what's available.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Silicon Valley Clean Energy has an analogous rebate program for heat pump water heaters and the electrical upgrades. Okay. Half of the remaining questions are about the blackout, and the other half of the remaining questions are about finding ways to upgrade your electrical panel. But I've got a couple of other outliers. Yes, sir, back there.
I got something that's not half out, blackouts. You're talking about contractors, and you would call, is why do you want to do that? In Southern California, where I'm from and where I work, we started a program, hero program and stuff like that. But part of that program was to educate contractors on how to encourage the use of new equipment, solar energy, and all that stuff. Is there anything up here that contractors can go to and learn how to install the new equipment?
Alan, do you have any insights into that?
No, my subcontractors, we've been doing it for a decade, we sort of don't pay attention to.
So sometimes you have contractors who will take the manufacturer's training programs that are interested in new equipment, and contractors say, gee, I can get an edge over my competitors by having this new equipment. On the other hand, you have contractors are inherently conservative because they kind of are responsible and they're going to want to kind of do the standard things.
But if you're getting educated, you reduce that risk, is what I'm saying.
Well, then I've certainly encouraged the utilities and the cities and so forth to make the education and training of contractors part of their programs by all means, because that barrier is there. And they don't want to take risks because it's new, so they need to be encouraged and facilitated, just like rebates for homeowners to buy the equipment. There should be resources put into bringing them up to speed into the market.
We've got,
For sure.
Rebates kind of get offset because the contractor's saying, well, I have to charge more because I don't know how to do this. So your rebate becomes less valuable in the long run.
we've got a few comments on this. Ma'am, wait in the back there.
I want to mention that PG&E is offering a lot of training courses free online. If you just go to the PG&E site, there are a lot of training.
Okay, so PG&E training, yes,
And
ma'am?
also, Silicon Valley Clean Energy, but I'm sure some of the other clean energies are working very closely with the unions for training programs, particularly the electrical unions. So there is a lot of work going on with the trades. We're foolish if we don't recognize the fact that you can't recommend something to be done and no one can do it, or it's too cost prohibitive. So yes, there's a conscious effort to train the professionals.
PG&E Energy Center up in San Francisco, the Pacific Energy Center. So PG&E does put on classes on a very regular basis at the Pacific Energy Center up in San Francisco, which is on Howard Street. You've got to get on their list, and they'll send you emails every once in a while, and they schedule them quite a ways out, so they're pretty good.
Yes.
Solar license is in additional to the electric license, just like the HVAC. If the electrician, they might not do the HVAC, they might not do the solar, same thing, you need got another separate license.
Yeah, in order to do solar, you need to have a C46 solar specialty license or an electrician license. They're both good for that. Right. Another non-electrical question here. Reducing carbon footprint is good, but is it cost effective to go all electric since it can bump you up into the higher electric rates?
Well, so to follow on from one of the previous questions about, well, is it efficient, the heat pump? I was trying to, speaking of getting stuff to where I was trying to pull up, we monitor all the houses that we do, and I was trying to pull up the latest data, but of course, last night my phone automatically updated to the new OS, and I have to redo all the passwords, and anyway, so I'll just use my memory. So the average consumption most of our homes are 3,000 square foot, kind of new single-family homes. And for both heating and cooling, the average daily consumption of power in a home like this is about 5 or 6 kilowatt hours. So if you do the math, and most of our homes all have solar, so it's all taken care of by the home. But if you were buying it, that would be at about 15 cents a day. That's 75 or 80 cents a day. So again, to answer your question about whether it's cost effective, certainly from an operational perspective, if you have a really well insulated, tight home with good windows and so forth, using this electrical equipment can be extremely cost effective and efficient.
So it's an interesting set of economics here. If you switch from a gas hot water heater to a purely electric hot water heater, the electric hot water heater will cost you more money to heat your water. But a heat pump has a 3-to-1 coefficient of performance. So you get 3 times more energy. So it turns out for heating hot water, the electric heat pump is effectively cheaper than gas. Similar kind of economics if you have an all-electric home to go to a heat pump. But I'd say, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you have a gas furnace and you switch to a heat pump HVAC system, your net energy bill might go up a little bit because you're going to go into a higher rate tier. But if you put solar on the roof, then you're effectively getting electricity around, amortized around 7 or 8 cents a kilowatt hour. So that works out fairly well. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but it makes a lot of sense if you're using a lot of electricity and if you have the roof space and it's an inexpensive system to put in solar. Yes?
Just for everyone to keep an eye out on your mailboxes, you will be getting, and should already have been getting, postcards that say in October of 2020 and beyond, electrical rates are going to substantively change. They're going to be time of use rates, and they're going to be much lower during the day and much higher at night. So your calculation about your energy bill is going to change significantly as you are brought into the time of use. So pay attention to that. It's going to
And
make a big difference.
That's a nice segue into what happens if the power goes out. And so a battery backup system, battery system gives you two advantages. The emotional benefit is that you will have a limited amount of backup power. You can't power your whole house, but if you just are powering your refrigerator, some lights, a few key appliances, your TV, your internet, it'll last throughout the night. And then when the sun comes up in the morning, as long as it's a sunny day, you're going to immediately get power again in the morning. But the other big advantage is there's an economic advantage as the state changes to cheap electricity during the day, because we have so many solar farms, and really expensive electricity in the evening. Having a battery that's charged during the day and you're discharging at night makes sense. I looked at my electric bill last month, 53 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity in the evening. And only on the EV rate, only 13 cents a kilowatt hour at night, obviously. Charge your car at night and charge up your battery during the day and use that battery as much as you can in the afternoon, or in the evening. Makes sense. All right, the heat pump question here. Can you speak to requirements for ambient air when the water heater and furnace are in a closet versus in an uninsulated garage? Alan, how would you kind of deal with that on a retrofit basis? Use your imagination.
Sure. Well, a garage is an ideal place for a heat pump water heater. So what's happening is that you're heating the water from the surrounding air. So what a heat pump what this appliance sitting in the corner will do, it will cool that. Let's say that it is a garage. It will cool and dehumidify that space. Okay, but that isn't in a garage or in a basement, or we even actually put some lean-to sheds in some locations, even outside, because our client is so mild. So it won't work as efficiently in the winter, work more efficiently in the summer, but it will do just fine. So in these sorts of utility areas, it's fine. The thing is that it does have a compressor. So there is a little noise. There's ambient noise associated with it, and a fan blowing across these coils. So they're getting much quieter and much more efficient every year. So in a utility space, it's fine. Closets can be problematic because, again, you need enough. It's taking heat from the ambient air, so you can't put it like you can a gas water heater. You tucked in a teeny closet. You can't necessarily do that with a heat pump water heater unless it's one where you can take ducts and do things with it. It can get complicated.
All right, a bunch of questions about where do you get a list of qualified contractors? Well, what does the audience suggest? We've got 5 people up here, but we got 50 people out there. Any suggestions for qualified contractors for this kind of upgrade? Yes.
Well, PG&E started probably 10 years ago, do different classes to teach contractors. Went well for a time, and then the economy went up, and some contractors lost the ball because obviously it was more easy to make quick kitchen than energy efficiency. Anyway, today on the Bayern program that is the PG&E paid, there are 2 websites, Bayern and Energy Upgrade California. Both rebates for PG, and you can have a list of contractors there.
So San Jose has.
The good news is also when I add the contractors in that program, they are specialized on energy efficiency because they have the certification and everything.
So there are lists on the Electrify San Jose website and on PG&E's website that would kind of help. Any other contractor suggestions? What we did is we just, the most important thing is find a contractor that you trust. So even if they haven't done what we're looking for exactly, maybe they're interested in it. So finding a trustworthy contractor is good. And then you get 3 quotes, and then you kind of have to make that tough decision of, do I go with the cheapest one? Is that guy gonna really know how to do it? Or do you spend more money for somebody that seems to be experienced? So that's always a challenge. How do you guys find contractors?
Well, I mean, I was gonna say word of mouth. I think, yeah, we all have the same challenge in doing that. I started with a Google search from some of those sites, and then talk to people who you know are in the industry and see who they recommend.
For our heat pump space heating system, like I mentioned, it was word of mouth. Somebody had some similar work done. For our water heater, we actually got it at Lowe's, and so the contractor was Lowe's recommended installation partner, and the person who came out was somebody who had trained on that specific water heater model and clearly knew what he was doing. My parents actually also followed my example and put in a heat pump water heater themselves. And in their case, they had a list of contractors that had come from the city of Palo Alto utility for contractors who had worked with heat pump water heaters.
What about induction stoves? How'd you do that?
I just ordered it on Home Depot, and they delivered it within 3 days. And then I have my contractor installed it 3 hours on a Saturday. So we had our brand new stove in 3 hours.
You do it yourself, it's super easy. You
Yeah.
got your cooktop, the new one in, make sure you got room, plug it in, boom.
Putting the induction stove wasn't too hard. The trick was that the dimensions of the induction stove cooktop were like half an inch bigger, the cutout, which meant that tile had to get cut. And so I had never done that before, and so I said, "Honey, who's your contractor?" And so just somebody that we had trusted. Never had done an induction cooktop, didn't even know what it was, but he read the manual, and it was done in 3 hours.
And by the way, for solar, wholesalesolar.com. I put my solar on my roof on one weekend with 2 guys. I've never done it before. I did it myself. What's that? Wholesalesolar.com. And they help you, they give you the plans that can be submitted for permitting. You do have to get, obviously, it inspected, but the inspector will tell you what you did right, what you need to do to get it right. If you got to do a little bit of homework, but it's super easy.
So it's a local company. Where you bought your panel?
I bought the panels from Wholesale Solar. It's out of you.
They're in Northern California. Wholesale Solar does basically a mail order company. If you're handy, they'll do it. If you don't want to climb on your roof or do the paperwork, then you hire a solar contractor, and there's a few around.
I'm just a bit worried about shipping the solar panel.
No problem.
Yeah, the shipping of them is pretty easy.
If some problem happens, you might need to ship back for the replacement.
So FYI, it cost me I think $9,300 to put 4.3 kilowatts on my roof. So I probably saved 60%. $9,300 for 4, and you can. I'm sure it's cheaper now because I did it 2 years ago.
Parts and labor.
I'm the labor.
I see my director of sales, Scott, over there with the solar shirt. He's cringing.
I put the rails up myself.
I ship the rails to you?
They ship that's including the rails, the risers, the wires, the inverter, everything.
It's a big project, but you can do it. I put my first one in 2001, and then I started up a company to do it. So,
Did you do the interconnection with PG&E?
I hired an electrician to make the interconnect with the main panel.
So what's interesting about all of these programs, solar, the heat pump water heater, things like that, in addition to trickiness in terms of configuring the software with the new equipment, there can be a lot of paperwork. So you need to find a contractor, if you want to do it yourself, that's really capable of doing the paperwork. The paperwork for solar is incredibly daunting. No surprise, because it's managed by PG&E. The paperwork that San Jose has put together for their heat pump water heater system isn't that hard, and my personal advice, if you're looking at doing this, is if your contractor's not prepared and ready to do that paperwork, you can do the paperwork yourself for the heat pump water heater with San Jose. I would suggest that you don't want to even try to do the paperwork for the solar or the battery interconnection.
Paperwork myself.
All right, that's admirable. Okay. All right. Yes.
This isn't a technical equipment question, but a permissions question, I guess. So we put solar on our roof. We are in an area where everybody is knocking down houses and building up. My concern is, and I don't know what all the legalities of this are, if somebody builds a house that is 2 stories next to your 1-story house and you have solar, and so your big investment in this solar is suddenly cut in half by somebody building up. Do you know anything about what the regulations are about that?
I'm sort of familiar with the
protections?
California Solar Rights Act,
Yeah.
which I helped update about 15 years ago. So you should
Really?
talk to your planning department in your town.
It's a county issue.
The county, you talk to the county, and there are regulations that discourage or prohibit somebody from significantly shading an existing solar system. Now, you're gonna have to tell your new neighbor that they're gonna have to do that, but let the city do that, or let the county do that. There are provisions for that. All right, any other questions? We're down to like the last 30 seconds or so. Got one.
When you decide to make, buy one of these things and have it installed, there's a whole list of questions that one doesn't think about when you say, yes, I want to do it. Where do you find that list of questions? So that I know that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do plumbing as well as electrical, and I only thought I had to do electrical, or I have to, replace some sheetrock because of that. Where's that list of?
I think that on the San Jose website, there's a bunch of frequently asked questions, but heck, what I heard today was the most comprehensive set of good questions and great answers that you could get anywhere. One comment over here?
And Silicon Valley Clean Energy is using some of its promotional program money to put together what we're calling a clearinghouse of information on solar. So I'll make sure that question gets added to that clearinghouse.
The question about where you can get the questions
What's the list?
answered.
What are the things, what are the questions you should ask?
Got it, okay. All right, that's good. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. That concludes the Ambassadors Electrification Workshop, and special thanks to the City of San Jose's Environmental Services Department, especially Liana Huen and Hannah for organizing this event. And everybody, please head upstairs again to check out some of the vendors and refreshments and the keynote panel, so you don't want to miss it. Thank you again.